in this recording, I want to start to introduce how to use motion tracking in After Effects for adding graphics and effects to video footage. So here's an example that I'm going to recreate. I've got a stock footage clip of some commuters walking, crowd of people, and I am going to add some graphics to one of the people in the crowd. So it's going to look something like this. I'm going to add this animated target scope that hones in on the guy with the white hair in the crowd. Now, before I get started on the demo, though, I want to explain the difference between motion tracking and camera tracking, because in After Effects, there is more than one tracking engine and more than one method of tracking. And so this recording is going to be the first in a series of recordings that I'm going to do about different tracking techniques. So motion tracking is basically when you have something that's moving in a shot that you want to attach graphics or effects to. So usually, a stationary shot like this, okay? The shot itself, the camera is stationary, and it's the people in the shot that are moving. So this is a motion tracking example, but camera tracking is a different thing, okay? Sometimes, you may have a shot, something like this, where everything in the shot is stationary, but the camera is moving, and I might want to add some graphics or effects to that shot that feel like they're a part of the shot. So here's an example. You can see I've added some text to the walls and some other graphics that pop up in the windows there. So this is not a motion tracking shot. This is a camera tracking shot, or also referred to as a camera match move, because I've added 3D graphics to the shot that match the camera move in the live action backplate. So that is a different scenario than what I'm going to cover here. So just wanted to point that out, though, because when you're looking at your video footage, you have to kind of decide, well, is this a motion tracking task or is this a camera tracking task? So if, we're trying to attach something to something that's moving in the shot and it's not a camera move, that's typically going to be a motion tracking task. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here. I've got After Effects open. I'm going to import the stock footage clip into the project panel, and I'm going to add it to a composition that matches the settings by dragging it to that new composition button. That creates a composition that matches the resolution, the frame rate, and the duration of that clip. Now, I've also got a graphic that I've already prepared. I've got another After Effects project file here called Target Scope that has a graphic of an animated target scope that I created using shape layers. So I'm going to import that as well. I'm going to bring in that After Effects project into this one, and that brings in a folder with everything that's a part of that project. That project only has one composition in it, which is the target scope that I created using shape layers in After Effects. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add that target scope composition to this composition so that I can use it for the shot. Now, the target scope composition is only about 10 seconds long. Notice I can't extend that duration. To do that, I would need to go into that pre-comp, extend the duration in the composition settings. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll make it 30 seconds instead of 10. And then I'll zoom out to reveal that added time, selecting all my layers, going to the end of the timeline, and then I'll hit Option and the right bracket key on the keyboard to trim a new out point for all of those selected layers to the new duration. Now I can go back to my main composition here, and now I've got ample time here to extend the duration of that layer to match the duration of my footage. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and get started motion tracking. So motion tracking is the task of basically analyzing your footage and creating keyframes that you're then going to apply either to another layer or to an effect on your layer. In this case, I'm going to apply the motion to the other layer, to the target scope layer. So I select the movie layer. In this case, that's the layer that is my motion source. And I go to Animation, and I go down to Track Motion. And that will isolate the layer in the layer viewer. And the view option in the layer viewer should say motion tracker points. Okay, so just be aware of that. Sometimes it may come up set to masks or anchor point instead if you were previously doing something with masks or anchor points. So it does need to say motion tracker points there. And then you will also see somewhere on your screen a panel with the tracker controls. Now the tracker control panel has some buttons at the top that correspond with the same options that you see here in the menu. So a little bit of redundancy there. You don't need to click any of those buttons. It has already added a motion tracker. So it says current track, tracker 1, track type, transform. Now by default, it's giving us a 1-point track for doing position. In another example, I'll show how we can do rotation and scale as well. And in another example, I'll show how we can also use the corner pin option to do a 4-point track for doing things like screen replacements. But for a simple position track, all you need is one track point. So I'm going to zoom in on the composition viewer, and there are 3 components to understand here with this track point. The track point itself is all 3 of these things together, and if you click anywhere inside of here, you can pick up and move the whole group. But there are 3 components here: this outer square that can be resized, this inner square that can be resized, and this little crosshairs in the center that can be moved. The crosshairs in the center is what we call the attach point. That is the location of the position keyframe that's going to be recorded. The inner square is what we call the feature area. That is the group of pixels that you are telling the tracker to look for on the next frame. So you want to set that up over something that is easy to find, over some pixels that have a distinct color value or contrast value that is going to be easy to locate on the next frame. So in this case, the gentleman here with the white hair, the top of his head, makes an ideal track point because nobody else in the crowd has very white hair like that. The outer square is what we call the search area. Those are the pixels, or I should say that is the part of the frame that it is going to analyze on the next frame looking for the feature area. So what you want to do when you're setting this up, first of all, you want to set up the feature area over a block of pixels that are going to be easy to find. Then you want to scrub your time marker forward a little bit and see how far away those pixels are going to be on the next few frames. Is it moving very quickly, or is it only moving a little bit? If it's moving quickly to another area of the frame, you're going to need to make the search area a lot bigger. And ideally, you don't want to make the search area too big because A, it's going to take longer to analyze, and B, there's greater chance of error. So there's definitely an efficiency level here when you're setting this up. In this case, he's not moving very far or very fast, so the search area doesn't need to be that big. It just needs to be big enough to find the pixels on the next frame. And then the attach point, I'm going to place that where I approximately want the center or anchor point of my target layer to be. In this case, I want that target scope graphic to be centered approximately over the guy's head. So I'm going to put the attach point kind of in the middle of his head. Okay, so I've got that set up. I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. In the tracker panel, I'm going to use the Analyze buttons to analyze the footage. Now I'll start by just going 1 frame forward at a time and seeing if it does a good job of finding the pixels. And in this case, it definitely is because it's such a distinct color value. It's easy to find and easy to follow, and nothing is going in front of it. It's not moving in or out of the frame. So this is a very, very simple tracking example. If you're sure it's doing a good job, you can go ahead and just click the Analyze Forward button and just let it do its thing. Now, good idea to keep your hand on the mouse. Be ready to click Stop if it starts to go astray. And in this example, it's going to do just fine. I'm going to let it go to about 10 seconds, and then I'm going to stop it by clicking stop. I'm only going to do about 10 seconds of animation here. In another example, though, I will show you what happens when it goes astray and the best way to handle it, how to fix it and correct it and, get better results. But this is a simple one. Now I'm going to shorten my work area to approximately 10 seconds, bring the time marker back here, and that looks pretty good. Looks like it locked onto the top of his head pretty good. So now I'm going to click Edit Target to tell the tracker what I want to do with those keyframes that it's created. And in this case, I've only got one option. That's my other layer. But you can see there's a grayed out option here for effect point. So if I did have an effect on my movie layer, something that has a position value or center value, like a lens flare or a particle effect, I could target that as the motion target. Anyway, in this case, it's going to the other layer, so I'll hit OK, and then hit Apply, and then hit OK to both X and Y dimensions. Now that I hit Apply, it takes me back to the composition view where I can see the composite of my layers. And if I preview by tapping the spacebar, you can see that the target scope is now locked on to the movement of the guy in the crowd with the white hair. Pretty good results. Now at this point, I'll come down here to the timeline. You can see that the movie layer has a group called Motion Tracker added to it with a tracker with the tracking data that we just recorded. I don't need to do anything with that. It's basically just saving it as a part of that layer if I wanted to apply it to something else later on. I'll go ahead and close that layer, go to my target scope layer, and hit the U key on the keyboard to reveal keyframes. And you can see that that has added position keyframes. So when I clicked apply, it basically copy and pasted those attach point keyframes from the tracker on the movie layer that it created to the position value of this target layer. So basically just doing a copy and paste. All right, so that's pretty cool and certainly a good starting point for my animation. Now for this example, just to kind of finish this up, I'm gonna zoom in on my time ruler a little bit here. I'm going to delete the keyframes from approximately 3 seconds and earlier so that I can manually animate the target scope and make it look like it's moving into the frame and then locking on to the guy's head. So I can delete the keyframes that were there, beforehand. And then I'm moving my time marker back a little bit here. And I'm going to hit Shift S to show scale. And I'm going to keyframe the scale here. I'm going to have it maybe scale down, maybe have it a little bit bigger here. And I want to recenter it in the frame, so I'll right-click on the word position and choose recenter. You can see that adds a position keyframe, moving my layer back to center. And then I'm going to move a little bit back from there, maybe add another position keyframe to hold it in place, and then moving back to the beginning. And I'm going to drag it off the left-hand side of my frame by scrubbing the X position value or by shift dragging the layer out of the frame like that. There we go. And I'll go ahead and preview and see what I've got. So it slides in, holds for a second, scales down, and then locks on to the movement of the guy in the crowd. Pretty cool. And then to embellish things further, maybe I'll add, some flickering by adding some opacity keyframes. Maybe when it locks onto the guy here, or before it locks onto the guy, I set some opacity keyframes. Maybe I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames, hitting the page down key on my keyboard. Put it at 0 opacity, and then I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put it back at 100. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, back to 0, and so on a few times just to get it to go from 0 to 100 a few times. And I don't want it to fade, though. See how After Effects, of course, wants to, in between those opacity keyframe values and fade the layer, I don't want it to fade. I just want it to blink. So I'll select the keyframes for opacity that I just set, go to Animation, and go to toggle hold keyframe to turn off the in-betweening for those keyframes. So it basically is just going to blink from 0 to 100. That's how we can get something to flash. Pretty cool. And then last thing here before I stop the recording, I'm going to add a line of text and put a text animation preset on it just to make things look a little cooler here. I'm going to grab my type tool. I'm going to click and create a text layer. I'm going to type in target acquired. And in the properties panel or character panel on the side of the screen here, I will choose a font to use. I'll just go with Arial Bold for this. Bring my font size up. I'm going to put my paragraph. Let me go to my properties panel so I can find the paragraph and put it at center alignment. There we go. And then I want to center it in the frame, so I'll hit P for position, right click position and center it, and then I'll just scrub the Y value to move it higher up. Maybe I change the font color. Maybe I decide to go all caps. And I can see that I've got my horizontal and vertical scale values here kind of messed up. Let me reset that to 100. Bring the size down. There we go. That looks good. And then maybe what I'll do is once it locks on to the guy in the crowd here, I'll add an animation preset to the text layer to animate the text out. So if I go to my effects and presets panel, let me undock that, pull it over here so we can see it. In the effects and presets panel, if I go to animation presets, go into my text group, and go into the animate in group, and then I'll find one of these presets to try out. I'm going to grab the one that says decoder fade in, dragging it onto the text layer. You can see the text layer disappeared when I did that because it hasn't animated in yet. It's added the animation starting where the time marker is. So you can see it now animates in. Pretty cool. If I select the layer, hit the U key on the keyboard to reveal the keyframes that the preset added. I can tighten up that timing a little bit, make that a little faster. And there we go. Nice little animation. So don't forget about those animation presets in the effects and preset panel at the very top, the animation preset folder. Animation presets are basically an animation that has already been created and saved that you can just apply to your layer. If you add a preset to your layer and you decide you don't like it, just go back through your undos, go to your edit history submenu, the most recent thing you did is at the bottom, and go back to before you applied the preset if you want to try a different one. That's how you can undo it and then just add a different one. All right, hopefully this gives you some ideas for getting started with some basic motion tracking to add graphics to your videos, as well as using the animation presets for quickly creating some cool text animations. In the next recording, I'll show a bit more with motion tracking, and then we'll be getting into some camera tracking as well. All right, I'll see you in the next video.